Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm Ukrainian Canadian. Today is November 14th, 2023, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? Let's go to Avdiivka first. I have an excellent update here. The Russians lost another Su 25 jet fighter today, which brings them to a total so far of 8 Su 25s lost in the last month. Truly a catastrophic rate of loss for the Russian Air Force. But it tells you as well how close the Russian Air Force needs to fly to the front line to be able to hit the Ukrainian positions. And so surely this was most likely an Su-25 that was downed by Ukrainian manpad. So the Russians are obviously flying a lot of these jet fighters trying to hit Ukrainian fortified positions in Avdiivka and other settlements. So the past month, the Russians have had colossal losses in this direction. I think that the Ukrainian forces have been exploiting this as another black hole, which will draw a lot of Russian resources and manpower in one direction alone. That doesn't really mean much, but obviously Ukraine needs to hold on to these positions, in my opinion, because this is a gateway to Donetsk. It's Ukraine's presence close to essentially the capital of Donbass. And we know that Putin needs some sort of victory because he will have upcoming elections in early 2024. And so he has no choice but to present another victory to his population. And let's not underestimate the average Russian and his tolerance to die for Putin or for whatever other reason. Their tolerance to death, they're also following orders all the time despite being mistreated by the commanders. And we're underestimating that. They're willing to die and they will continue to do so. It doesn't matter if it's 300,000 soldiers, 500,000, 1 million. I think the Russians will continue on swarming and trying to exhaust the Ukrainians through these infantry, attacks that the Russians are doing. But what is positive is that in the past month, the Russians have not been able to take settlements. Yes, they have taken some fields in the south and in the north of Avdiivka, so closer to Krasnohorivka, Pervomayske in the south. But the settlements is where I would start raising concern, as I said in the past. If the Russians take Stepove, Berdichi, or in the south they take Severne, Tonenke, or even go more up north in Novokalinove, Karamik, this would not be good news for the Ukrainian forces. So I think that so far they have not been able to do that, the Russians, and the Ukrainians have been successfully able to hold off the Russian attacks. And having, fields under your control doesn't mean as much as having settlements under your control. Let's go to Kherson now. So the next big front line that everybody's talking about. And in Kherson, there's some really good positive news for Ukraine as well. Yesterday, I shared with you guys a post from RIA Novosti, so a huge state-run Russian media channel, and they were declaring that the Russian forces have no choice than to withdraw to better defensive positions, essentially another Russian goodwill gesture, which was a very surprising post because you don't see the Russians talking about withdrawals unless something bad is happening. And they quickly withdrew that statement. So we don't really know what exactly happened, but clearly it's not going in Russia's advantage. Now, the Institute of Study of War released an analysis of what that could have been for that, post, and they said that it could be mainly two things. So one of them is the Russian high command trying to test the waters to see what kind of public reaction from Russia there would be in the announcement of a Russian withdrawal from the left bank. So they're kind of just trying to see what kind of reaction they're going to get as a result. And the second one that is more likely to be is that the Russians are doing a misinformation campaign to give too much, have the Ukrainians being a little bit overconfident and underestimate the Russian presence in the left bank. So again, you guys can let me know what you think that could have been, but it's very interesting that they quickly removed that statement after posting it, which either way means that the Russians clearly something is not going according to their plan. And so this is a very positive development for Ukraine. We have been seeing in the last few weeks the Ukrainians more and more traversing with armored vehicles from the right bank to the left bank. And this obviously is a good sign. The Ukrainians are confident to do that. They have control over certain areas in the left bank. And the Russians, from what I see, are now moving a lot of reserves in this direction. They're trying to utilize everything they have to just hold off the Ukrainian attacks. They are in the dilemma, I think. But nothing will stop the Russians to mobilize more men and eventually move them to Kherson. So we'll see how that develops. But So far, it's very positive for Ukraine. It seems that there's a lot of unrest within the Russian media, the Russian society in terms of Kherson. The other development I wanted to talk about as well is in Krasnodar. And so today the Ukrainians hit a military base in Krasnodar, so another great hit. Ukraine needs to continuously do that, and I think it's on a daily basis, hitting military bases, factories, Russian military assets in Russia. So clearly this was the work of a Ukrainian weapon, because the West does not sign off these types of attacks with their own weapons. So unfortunately, Ukraine has to utilize what it has developed itself. So this was most likely a Ukrainian drone or something else that hit this military base in Krasnodar. Another factory was also targeted last night in the Moscow Oblast or the Moscow region. It was apparently a factory that is building the Kinjal missiles. So these are the hypersonic missiles that Russia's been developing, and they have been utilizing them to terrorize the Ukrainian population, fortunately. So I think this is an excellent hit because we know that the Russians are planning to continuously and increase their number of strikes on Ukrainian soil and Ukrainian infrastructure during the winter. And we've seen an increase of that in the last few days as well, with more air threats and air alerts in Ukraine. So that is another great hit from Ukraine. And another really positive news is in the north of Ukraine. And so Ukrainian patriots, a Ukrainian Boer, killed a Russian soldier who was part of a sabotage unit, diversion group that was trying to enter through the Chernobyl exclusion zone, so the north, close to Pripyat and Chernobyl. So it shows you again that the north is not 100% safe. We stopped talking about the north a lot, but I think that the Russians still pose a threat, not only from Russia, but from Belarus, because we know that Belarus is a vassal state of Russia. Essentially, Belarus only exists because of Lukashenko, and I think that as soon as Lukashenko is gone, Putin will most likely take over control of Belarus. It's unfortunate, but I think that Lukashenko was the only reason that Belarus exists right now. And so the Russians are also utilizing Belarus as a training ground, a trampoline for Russians launching missiles against Ukraine. So it's very unfortunate, but it shows you again that there are threats in the north and there are diversion sabotage groups, Russian sabotage groups working in the north as well. Whether it be in Kiev region, in Chernihiv, in Sumy, the Russians have a lot of zones that they can infiltrate, unfortunately. But that is not to say that the Ukrainians are not doing the same. I certainly believe that the Ukrainians are also, launching their own sabotage groups through these areas who are doing great work within Russia. I have no doubt that this is also ongoing. So here you go, guys. This is the update for today. I don't really talk much about the north either, but the Russians, again, have a lot of presence here in the north. I forgot to also talk about the fact that the Ukrainian forces kind of liberated the small little village of Topoli, which is right by the border with Russia and Ukraine, by the Oskil River, which kind of divides, I should say, this front line under what the Russians control in Ukraine and what the Ukrainians control in Ukraine. So this has been the natural barrier. And you see a theme here, even with the Dnieper River, it's the same situation, right? Rivers are natural defenses. So you can see that the Ukrainians took back this small little village, so they have more of a control closer to this road that certainly the Russians are utilizing in Piske, which heads into Kupiansk to reinforce their positions and continuously launch attacks in the north. So this was another little Ukrainian gain in the last week in Topoli. So that is the update for today, guys. Thank you so much for your support. Please, if you like my content, like my video, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you, and Slava Ukraini!